Last night at UFC 292 in Boston, we crowned a new UFC Bantamweight champion in the now 17-1 Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series alum and UFC and social media megastar in the Suga show, Suga Sean O'Malley, as he defeated Aljamain the Funkmaster Sterling via a second-round knockout, and a vicious one at that. O'Malley is now the first fighter to come off of the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series and win a world championship, which says a lot about the potential superstardom that certain fighters can achieve if they are to get a contract being victorious on that show and having a good performance. But this video isn't about the Contender Series. This video is about a contestant on the Contender Series and the now new UFC Bantamweight champion in Sean O'Malley. O'Malley versus Sterling was thought to be a mismatch in many people's opinions, including my own when I originally thought about the matchup. I thought the grappling and wrestling was going to be too much for the Suga show, which we saw was a problem against a former champion in Petr Yan in his razor-thin decision win back at UFC 280 in Abu Dhabi. I figured if Yan could do that to O'Malley, then Sterling would have no issue getting the back and potentially submitting him in the first round. However, when I really thought about it, and I thought about the height, the reach, the ability to mix up the creativity in terms of the striking and the striking output, and the lack of defense when Sterling closes the distance or gets into the pocket, the more I started to side with, in his words, undefeated fighter in Suga Sean O'Malley. And that's exactly how the fight played out. Sean O'Malley was able to play the matador and keep his back to the center of the cage for the majority of it. And even if Sterling was successful in pushing back O'Malley, he was able to circle left and right and move laterally to be able to get off the cage. Pivots, lead foot pivots, lateral movement, in and out movement, and switching of the stances to square up the hips of the now former champion in the Funkmaster were making this a very difficult puzzle for the champion to solve. And before you knew it, in the beginning of the second round, a fade back right hand over the lead jab of Sterling as he walked into the pocket with his chin in the air dropped the champion face first and allowed for follow-up shots to crown Suga Sean O'Malley as the new king atop the throne at 135 pounds. And we all know that for the UFC and Dana White, this is exactly what they wanted. I'm not going to sit here and say that Dana White hated Aljamain Sterling or hated him as the champion, but we all knew that the cash cow in Sean O'Malley was exactly who Dana White and the powers that be wanted to walk out of the TD Garden as the new UFC Bantamweight champion, and that's exactly what they got. Now, in looking into the proverbial looking glass and looking into potential matchups in the future, I'm not so certain that Aljamain Sterling will get his rematch. Sterling talked about plans to move up to 145, dealing with the horrible weight cut at bantamweight for so long and thinking that his body couldn't take it anymore. And we may see him move up to featherweight, but I feel like the featherweight division may be a big task for Aljamain Sterling. But when looking into Sean O'Malley's future matchups, if we were to take the Funkmaster off the table for at least the time being, I feel like another winner at UFC 292 in Marlon Chito Vera, coincidentally the only man to hold a UFC victory, and albeit via finish, over Sean O'Malley in his mixed martial arts career, could be next for the man they call Suga. If it's not Vera, however, I feel like the next best matchup in terms of a stylistic matchup and overall entertaining matchup for the fans would be the man who just defeated Rob Font in the UFC Nashville main event via decision in Corey the Sandman Sandhagen. Sandhagen and Sean O'Malley is a phenomenal matchup, and it's a matchup that I feel like favors O'Malley from a stylistic standpoint, and that's what I would do. But at the end of the day, there's one thing that's true. The UFC struck gold, and their cash cow is now a champion. The first ever fighter off the Contender Series to claim gold is Suga Sean O'Malley. And not only did he achieve this title victory via finish and with flying colors, but he was able to step back on the court and sink a three-pointer in his first championship bout.